You're listening to Finding Your Genius Zone with Dirk Nevelle. With the help of successful individuals across industries, Dirk breaks down the unknown parts of every vocation while highlighting the importance of finding a career where you can leverage your natural skills, passions, and interests. Now here's your host, Dirk Nevelle.
Hey everybody, this is Dirk Nevelle. Welcome to the podcast. On with me today is someone that I really like as a person. He's one of the guys that came into my life years ago. We're in the same industry, and we're in the same coaching group. And what I mean by that is there's about 40, 50 of us across the country that are in the mortgage industry. And Brent was one of those guys I heard about, came back in. And he's one of those guys that takes it to a different level, and initially, like as a guy in his business, you get threatened by guys like, oh my God, this dude's doing it in a way I've never seen it. But then ultimately you kind of deal with that and you learn from him. So I'm really honored that he's on with me today. He's one of the guys that I really wanted to have on because I think, when you hear his story and you hear how he works and operates and thinks, you're going to really learn a lot about not only the mortgage industry, but starting a business, being brave enough to exit an industry and start a new one and then come back. So I'll stop rambling. Brent Hicks, welcome to the show.
Hey, man. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Thank you, buddy. And Brent's, by the way, he splits time between Dallas and LA, and right now he's in LA. And so I think that's sunshine coming through the windows, right?
Yeah, I'll give you a little glimpse there.
Bud, you didn't have to do that. You didn't have to rub it in. Being in Seattle,
my happy place, man. I got the doors open, fresh air's coming in. It's like, how can I be in a bad mood when I'm sitting here staring at Mother Nature's beauty?
Yeah, dude, it's a good life you've carved out, but you've worked hard for it. I've always thought you should be a country rock star, but maybe that's the next phase for you. But tell us a little bit about so people are tuning in, they have an idea, what you do, but in your own words, how would you articulate if, you're on the beach hanging out, someone asks you, hey, Brent, what do you do? How would you respond?
I'm a mortgage banker by career. And that's afforded me to also be an investor. I've always been entrepreneurial. I've owned multiple businesses. And our business, it's a business that I built that I treat with entrepreneurial spirit. So, I would say I'm an entrepreneur, but I'm a mortgage banker by trade and definitely an investor by kind of passion and necessity.
Okay, so when I look at your history, you were with a bunch of mortgage companies, and then I think in 06, 07 or something, you departed a little bit, tried something different. So you said entrepreneur. That's kind of what I think when I think of you. Like you say you're a mortgage banker, but you take it to a level that not a lot of people do. And I know you're a humble guy, but tell me a little bit about your mindset, like in the business. You're not just a dude that's trying to lock loans or manage a small team. You're a big part of your company. I think you're a divisional president, but what is it that drives you? Because you do it at a level that is impressive and unique. And so you're not, in my mind, you're not just some dude locking loans. You're much more than that. But what is it, that gets you to do what you do and drives you?
I mean, I think part of it has just been internal drive. And as a kid, as I've unpacked so much of my life and trying to figure out why I do the things that I do, what the story in my head is, trying to correct those stories that were just improper and things that I was telling myself. I've gotten to understand myself a bit more through that journey. And I grew up, with two older brothers. During my upbringing, I was fortunate enough to watch the mistakes my brothers are making. And, I made a bunch of mistakes in my life as a kid, many as an adult, but early on I got to see those and I didn't have to buy those lessons. But being the younger brother, I don't know. I think just something was impressed upon me to survive. I'm a Leo by nature. And so my early traits were, leave me alone. Let me do it myself. My brother would try to help me build a puzzle. Like I was an asshole. I'd knock the puzzle apart because I wanted to just figure it out on my own. And, my mom was very entrepreneurial, still is. I think she helped teach me that early on. And so, I had lemonade stands and grass cutting businesses. I traded baseball cards and sold them in big shows. I'd go bang doors for anything. When the guy with the kid was selling candy, I was the one that would go sell candy door to door for the school. But the first year I went and sold, I got second place to a girl whose dad owned the local grocery store. So it was like a $300 prize for first place. Second place got $100. And I felt kind of slighted because, I banged on a lot of doors and she just had, the luxury of geography. But at the end of that contest, the $1.50 candy bars, they sold for 50 cents to the students because they had all these extras. And so the next year, I just saved my money from cutting grass and all my little odd jobs. And I bought all the candy bars they had left for 50 cents and then went around the neighborhoods and banged on doors and sold them for $1.50 and made like $400. So I've always just had this, this just drive, and I enjoy it. I enjoy the grind. I like waking up very focused and determined that I'm going to take the hill. Napoleon Hill talks about it. There's that story of the general and they burned the ships, right? They came in, they were outmanned, outpowered, outgunned. And when they hit the beach, the captain burned the ships and said, the only way we're going to get through this is by getting through this. And they did, because they had no choice. And as a kid, that's the way I looked at it. I saw my brothers at times, coming back and moving back into my parents' household and getting bailed out time and time again. And so from an early age, I told myself, when I moved out at 17, I was never going to move back in, was never going to ask my parents for help. I was never going to be a burden. And I had no choice. I had to swim and I had to take the hill.
Yeah, I mean, this is power. I mean, you and I have had many conversations, but this is powerful. It's interesting because I'm thinking about a 25-year-old listening to this right now, and everyone has an edge or a story or something that propels them. And I mean, knowing you now, I can understand, like, yeah, now this makes sense. Like, but I'm also wondering, you had two older brothers. My guess is you wanted to, not to get deep, but you didn't want to be a burden, but you wanted to please, make it easier on your parents so they didn't have to worry about you. Did this conviction, this drive, can you pinpoint it to anything like in high school or elementary school, or was it just in your DNA? This is who you are.
I mean, I think it was always in my DNA, but maybe, I psychoanalyze myself and try to figure out why I did the things that I did, maybe being the youngest and trying to get attention and get seen, right? And then trying to be, because I was competitive, right? I'm a Leo, and I've had a competitive drive since I was born. And so now I'm competing with somebody that's 5 and 11 years older than me. And so I was always trying to elevate and maybe try to get noticed above people that were far more mature and developed than I was. And so I think maybe that helped to precipitate that. And then each one of these other catalysts along the way helped to galvanize it or drive me down a path more of just being an entrepreneur. Like I've had jobs, I have a job, but I don't have a job. I'm not like a hireable person, because everything about my makeup is I'm going to treat everything with an ownership mentality, including myself. I believe 100% ownership. If I was telling somebody today, or if I give advice to somebody, that's what I tell them. Like, first and foremost, never be a victim. Have 100% ownership of everything in your life. So much that if I walked out into the middle of the street, I get hit by a car, I have to go back and I have to look at the situation and say, what could I have done differently? I don't need to blame the car. I need to blame myself, because I may not have looked left. I may not have looked right. What did I do to put myself in a situation to get hit by a car? And so I think in everything that we do, that's something that I learned, and that's something that I've embraced, is 100% ownership. When you own it 100%, there's no fingers to point, and whatever it is, you have to do it because you earn it. But then it also gives you fulfillment, right? When you have 100% ownership, and then as you start to achieve, I've found that, the level of fulfillment that it gives me, I don't know, it could be unparalleled to other things that I've experienced.
Yeah, I want to unpack that a little bit later on. But before we exit your history, so Walk me. So you went to high school in Texas, and then did you go to college in
Yeah,
Texas?
I grew up in Louisiana.
Oh, Louisiana. That's right.
So I went to a little Catholic high school, graduated with like 90 people. I went to USL, which is in Lafayette, Louisiana. The summer break of my freshman year, I was supposed to go to Nebraska and sell Bibles. And I had it set up. I was going to live in somebody's attic apartment, go bang on doors because I knew how to bang on doors. Well, my brother had just moved to Dallas and had met some girl, moved out there. And right before summer starts blowing me up, like, you need to come see this. You should come spend the summer here with me. And he got in my head. I elected not to take the job in Nebraska selling Bibles. I went to Texas, went to Dallas for the summer, got a job waiting tables. And after the summer, I moved back to Louisiana to go back to school. There's a French word called idée fixe, and that means a thought that occupies the mind. And once I got to Texas from, growing up in a town with 50,000 people and going to college at a town that had 50,000 people, like I had not traveled a lot. Like our vacations may be Disney World or a beach in Florida or a beach in Mississippi, like Gulfport or Biloxi. But, I was probably 17 or 18 before I even got on a plane. So I hadn't really experienced but the world through one lens that was very, very limited. I was looking at it through like a little stir straw. And then as I went to Dallas, I saw opportunity, I saw youthfulness, energy. And that thought was in my mind, and it kept on rolling over and over. And so finished my third semester of college, dropped out, packed the little things that I had up in my car, and I drove to Texas, trying to figure out what I was going to do with my life. And I had worked for Outback at the time in Texas, moved back to Louisiana, got a job at Outback. And so I went back to Dallas, waiting tables for Outback, and then took on another, job at a restaurant, and then started a roofing company at about 21 years old. Had massive success, banging on doors. So we had a hailstorm, and at 21, I was probably making 30 or 40,000 a month. And this is, not to date myself, but like 1994 or something. So it was a lot of money. And the Bible says a fool and his money will soon part. At that age, I was a fool, and my money was soon parting from me because I thought it was time to party and, go buy Dom Perignon and stupid shit. I didn't learn the principle of build your business and build your house, right? Reward yourself later. I was rewarding myself now. And so the business ultimately failed because I became complacent and lazy. And that was my epiphany there, Dirk. I woke up one morning, I had enough money to pay my rent for one more month. I had enough money to pay my car payment for one more month. No job sold, no income coming in. And then that was the change. That was the catalyst, because I wasn't going to go home. I wasn't going to get bailed out. And so I went back and swallowed my pride, started bartending again, got one bartending job, two bartending jobs. Then I started selling copies from Minolta. So I was working 3 jobs, like 8 to 5, 5 to 10, Monday through Thursday, Friday, 8 to 5, 5 to 10, 10 to 4 at the third job, Saturdays, 4 to 10, and then 10 to 4 a.m. So I was working a lot. I had the opportunity to save a bunch of money. I didn't have time to spend a single dollar because all I was doing was focused on working. And there were some guys that were coming in one of the restaurants that I worked at that were in the mortgage business. What I realized was in the copier business, I had 2 zip codes. There were something like 2,000 total businesses, mainly blue collar, that probably didn't need copiers. When was I going to ever get a referral from somebody that needed a copier that happened to be in my 2 zip codes? Like, my income, the ceiling was so low, I couldn't eclipse it, right? Just geographically, mathematically, it was limited. And so these guys coming in the mortgage business, I saw that as residual income, a way to build relationships and rapport. And what I ultimately believed was, if I became licensed in all 50 states, everyone that I potentially met in my life could be a referral or a potential client. And if people are buying and selling or refinancing, and the average loan 5 to 7 years, like, it could be an endless amount of referrals. And so I pursued it. I quit the copier job, started working the mortgage business, and then kept my 2 bartending jobs to fund myself, because this was a zero commission, it's a straight commission job, zero salary. And it took me 6 months. 6 months, there were moments that I thought about quitting, and if I had, I would have been that 6 feet from gold moment. But I kept on going, and then the business started to come, and then we learned things along the way, applied it, read a bunch, applied, got mentored, joined mastermind groups, and really blew it up and grew it into something significant.
Yeah,
I'm throwing up on you. I'm sorry.
No, dude, this is impressive. I mean, like I said, I've never really sat down and gotten this deep on your background, but I mean, I keep going. Like, the dance in this podcast is, you and I have years of experience and wisdom, and my goal is to create content that would be life-changing for people, to kind of shift the way they're thinking about a career. Because when I came out of school, I was thinking about paying off debt. I was thinking about, my dad was very superficial, always comparing us to someone who lived on the lake. So I was thinking about just making money. And there's nothing wrong with money. I love money. But I think younger adults coming out of school, maybe in high school, like there's a lot of stress. People are struggling, trying to figure it out. And I think the more you talk, it's just very apparent why you're so damn good at what you do. But it comes from a place like you're describing insight that you had that I don't think a ton of people have. Like you thought about referrals, you thought about the ceiling being low in the copier business, and you thought about, if I can be licensed in all 50 states and create a recurring revenue stream through referrals, like I can go crazy. And you have gone crazy. But these are the things that I want younger people that are watching to think about. Do you know anybody? I mean, do you have a network of people who like you? And, this is a popularity contest. And if you haven't figured it out by now, Brent's a pretty likable dude, and he's very smart. And like, for me, I want people who work their ass off and are smart. I want, people to earn their business. And so you certainly earn it. So what I want to do again is kind of get back into, you've worn the hat of a producer. And, you're talking about knocking on doors, selling Bibles. I mean, this is a contact sport, right? This is phone calls. This is not always glamorous and sexy. It's just staying in front of people. But you are a producer, and you're also a manager and a leader. I want to kind of get into both of those. As far as a producer, I mean, you kind of talked about it. What is it like being a producer in the mortgage industry? Like, that's not so obvious. Like, someone can read a job description or watch a YouTube or whatever, but like, tell us what tell the people what they don't know. Like, what have you learned through years of being successful in terms of locking loans that would be valuable for people to know in terms of what makes somebody successful?
Look, I'll quote Tony Robbins, and Tony Robbins says, find someone that has what you want, do exactly as they do, you'll get the same result. Modified, you'll get a modified result. So you got to follow a process, and you've got to do it time and time again. There is no get rich quick anywhere. I don't know of any besides the lottery, and that's that's like a hope certificate that doesn't pay off. So it takes time, it takes maturity. You got to be long in the tooth, and whatever it is that you do, think not days and weeks ahead, think years ahead, and what do you want, and then just focus on it, right? I mean, you look at the best companies in the world so many times, and Good to Great, Jim Collins talks about this, and they didn't just become Google, they didn't just become Apple, it didn't become Microsoft overnight. These companies grew underground a lot of times for years and years and years. And it's like Chinese bamboo that, may grow 7 to 10 years underground. And then all of a sudden it spouts 100 feet. Well, all you see is the 100 feet above ground that it just instantly grew. But no, that wasn't the case. It was years of refining, years of growth that happened. And then all of a sudden you hit an inflection point. But in the mortgage business, it's about the time and the effort. It's about the learning. It's about getting outside your comfort zone. It's about making calls. It is very much in any relationship, as we're building relationships, going and meeting somebody for lunch, or having a lunch with a referral partner, future referral partner. Like, just because I met them one time, I shouldn't think that I'm instantly going to get business from them. It is a process, right? And the gestation period could be a couple of months, could be a couple of weeks, could be a couple of years. When I look at relationships, and I look at bigger relationships, my dad used to say, kill the queen, the nest dies with it. And what that means is I can spend the same amount of time focusing on decision makers that can have a bigger impact than I can off individual bees. So kill the queen, and now I've got the entire nest that goes with it. And so I've always tried to focus in on some bigger opportunities while I have the smaller opportunities kind of paying my bills and driving. But they take a long time. And when I look at it, like, okay, would I invest 3 years just slowly building relationship and rapport for something that could generate me, generational wealth, potentially a very significant income? Well, absolutely. I'm already doing this. I'm already doing this job. I just need to fill my gaps constantly with producing activities, money making activities. And the law of averages, the more times I get up, the more times I get at the bat, the likely I'm going to get a hit. And at first, the pitches seem super fast. And then eventually you start to see the pitches before they even come. And that's maturity in the business.
Yeah. I mean, you also have like, okay, so somebody can go down this road and follow all these, do all these things, but eventually if the fire or the genuine enthusiasm isn't there, I think they'll, the race will slow down and they'll end up, maybe dying out. There's something inside you. I know we talked about your background and, the grit and the competitiveness, but you're also in your genius zone, obviously. So like when you're talking, it's like I wouldn't want to compete with you. I mean, you're so good at what you do, but like you really believe in what you do and you really love it. And I guess the question I would have is, would this transfer to a different industry, or is there something about the mortgage industry that suits you versus selling medical supplies?
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely something about the mortgage business that I love. I left it. And earlier on, you're asking the question. So I built a very large mortgage business. 07 was devastating, right? From a business perspective. That was the best gray hair experience, the best life lessons, the best teachers I learned during that experience. It taught me to get really wide in my income streams and to not, to be solely focused on my efforts, but to use that cash flow to be able to drive other cash flow opportunities. Built the business back, was the biggest I had ever grown it at the time, but I felt like the mortgage business was going to change. I had an opportunity to go start another business outside the mortgage space with a mentor that had numerous huge successes and exits. And I felt like I could get a world-class MBA working with him and growing this other business that we started. 6 months into it, I realized, okay, I'm really passionate about the mortgage space. And from that moment, I knew I was going to get back in. I just didn't know when I would have the other business that we started in a place that would allow me to go back and pursue the thing that I then realized that I love the most. There's multiple things I could be passionate about. I love real estate. I love any type of real sales environment. I have to believe in what I'm doing, right? If I lacked belief, then I can't go out because I wouldn't be authentic. I wouldn't be my normal self if I was just selling something to monetize, or to pay my bills. Like, I need to believe in something. And then when I believe in something and I'm passionate about something, and even when we had Evolve, like I was passionate about the products and changing people's lives and changing people's health. And we started a 501(c). I mean, it's still going. We've fed 50 something million kids so far. Like, I'm passionate about that shit. So I don't think there's like one love and one thing that I could do or that somebody listening can do. It's about finding something that you enjoy learning and applying, and then continue to grow your passion for it. I will also say the more you succeed, the easier it becomes, the more your belief starts to grow, right? Those things are all kind of aligned. So the more successes you get, the more it starts to perpetuate. And the more it starts to perpetuate, the more it becomes self-fulfilling.
Yep.
You just got to put the time and effort in.
So not to be like negative, but like, I think it's also important to be real upfront and clear about the industry. Maybe there's some things about the business that you don't like, or some things you're like, man, I didn't see this coming. Is there anything that you can think of that might help somebody make a better decision about entering this industry? Like something that again, every job isn't perfect. There's good and bad, but is there something about the business or two things, for example, that you just don't like that someone needs to really understand?
I mean, I think the hardest thing is a boom and bust cycle. We have very, very high highs and we have very low lows. And sometimes those things can change. You can be at the top of the peak and in 6 months be at the bottom of the valley, where in a different business, maybe the peaks aren't as high and the valleys aren't as low, and they don't happen quite as fast. So you could potentially prepare for some of the change. And so I think that's part of it, right? I mean, some of the regulation that comes in, the changes, some of that stuff impacts our livelihoods. It impacts our bars, our future disciples, our employees, you know, and the bust times, right? When things become difficult. What I don't like is with as many people as we employ and I employ, you know, I've got to go in and make all the hard decisions and help my groups make hard decisions. And so that can be taxing, right? I mean, when you're letting go one person is difficult, letting go hundreds of people. You know, I take it hard because I feel like, you know, it's my responsibility and they're my responsibility, but I also have to be a steward of the business and I got to do the right thing to save the patient. So those would be the things that, you know, maybe are difficult. On the other side of it, the peaks are so high. If you build the right disciplines, if you build your business, then build your house. Use the cash flow to start generating other cash flow. Get wide, get appreciating assets, you know, things that Meadow would talk about that you can reduce your tax burdens on. I don't know of many businesses that can cash flow the way this does. I mean, I'm a college dropout and you know, we've been able to financially achieve some really significant things through what this business has given us. I also like because it's counter-cyclical. Like we're the first ones to get hit. You know, we're not in a recession yet. Arguably, we're going into one. Arguably, we got hit first, but we're going to be the first ones out. And so when the rest of the economy starts to suffer, we're crushing it. And so when things get discounted and things get cheap, our cash flow starts to be the highest it's been. And so it does create this dichotomy that's, you know, it's counter-cyclical, counterintuitive. But if you capitalize on it and keep your expenses low, then, you know, a couple of really good years and you could set yourself up for life.
Yeah, I love this. And the other thing that I'm so excited to have you on, because you also wear the hat of managing a large team, an organization. So the skill sets, like some guys are really good at locking loans and producing and going home, but you know, you've done both at an exceptional level. So a lot of these things you're talking about right now are from a producing standpoint. If you were to put the other hat on, and you talked a little bit about some of the stress of letting people go, but what don't people know about what it's like to run a company? I mean, you've already kind of gotten into the uncertainty of the market and how some things are beyond our control, but as a manager of operations, other salespeople versus a guy that just locks loans. I mean, some people do really well in one camp and not the other. You do really well in both. What is it about you that allows you to kind of jump from both to both really effectively? Because I don't think that's common.
I mean, what I believe is I've walked a mile in their shoes and I still walk a mile in their shoes. And I have kept my personal production because I wanted to be able to generate my own revenue and income and to be able, you know, to live off of what fruit I was generating and not have to be a burden or taxing or have to rely on other people. And so it's given me freedom. And then it's also given me credibility because I'm not a manager that's talking about how, you know, when I was 10 years old, I walked 10 miles uphill in the snow, carried my baby sister. And, you know, I used to fight animals for food. You know, I've always done and continue to do the things that I'm asking them to do. And so when recruiting, when retaining, when working with them, we understand what the rock in their shoe is. And so we're more equipped to help them with that rock in their shoe and help them evolve. And having been at the top of the mountain, it's easy to help someone get to where you've been instead of prognosticating what it's like or what you're supposed to do when you're not doing the same thing. So I'm a big believer in do as I say, not do as I say, not as I do. Like I've got to do the things that I'm asking other people to do. I've got to be willing to mop the floors, take out the trash, do whatever the fuck it takes to help them. And I have to be a real steward. I have to put everybody before I put myself. Leaders eat last. And so if I come into management with me and what's in it for me is the priority instead of what's in it for them, then I think that I'm failing at leadership, right? I want to build business in a way that enriches the lives of the people that are around me. It's a for-profit business, right? There's still income, and my objective is to be profitable and make a profit, but I'm always going to put them first. I'll take the last scraps of what's left, and then just build trust and relationships. But I have to be the steward of the ship. And when we have to make tough decisions, I have to be the first one in, and I've got to put on my big boy pants. I'm a big believer in eating the frog, doing the hardest thing that you have to do the first thing in the morning. Like instead of lamenting or having that thing sit there on your shoulders and stress you out all day long thinking about it, I want to just rip the Band-Aid off. I want to do the hardest damn thing early in the morning and then be done with it and not sit there and process and then now I'm not my best self all day long because I've got this thing that's holding me back that I'm thinking about all day long.
Yeah, I mean, you're strategic about how you organize your day. Are there a couple examples of things, these negative things? Like, is this like saving a deal or maybe having to have a difficult conversation with someone who's not producing? What are a couple mortgage examples of these things that you'd want to take care of early in the day?
Yeah, it could definitely be saving a deal. It could be, going back and something that happened, right? That I've got to have a conversation with somebody that if something got missed on a file, right? Or all of a sudden we found something in the documentation that they sent us that creates an issue, like I need to address that with them immediately. And sometimes people don't want to have that conversation. They feel like it's a negative conversation. I look at it as I have to be their fiduciary. My job is to vet it and help them to navigate. If there's turbulence ahead, I have to let them know. I can't just hold on to it and have my hope certificate and hope that I can travel through it and we're going to be safe. No, they've got their livelihood on the line. And so we've got to talk about whatever it is, no matter how difficult it is, right away. And then it could be with an employee. It could be with a termination. It could be with performance, right? It could be setting expectation. It could be working with your team and things that they're doing that you want them to do differently. It could be putting somebody on a performance plan. I mean, there's all kinds of conversations that we could have day to day that become uncomfortable, but it's best, in my opinion, just to knock it out.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. I can totally see in my past where I've waited on certain things and it's kind of ruined the energy of the day and my effectiveness. So, when thinking about a job, I'll give you an example. When I was thinking of jobs, I wasn't thinking of freedom as something that's really important to me. I have 2 kids. I've coached all their sports. I still wake up, take my son to school. I wake up with him. I go to bed with him. I know that's really, really important for me. And I didn't know that at a younger age. And so the dance here is I'm trying to get people to think about their temperaments and the things that are important to them. Do you want freedom and flexibility? Do you want to be capped with your compensation? Do you want to deal with the bullshit of politics of having a boss, raise your quota and cut your commission, or having to bend the knee, politically in a big company? In your world, I'm curious, I can just knowing you, I know freedom is probably high on the list, but what are 2 or 3 of the things that are non-negotiable? And the reason I ask you this is because I want people to understand what is real even though it's unique to you, it's also probably pretty consistent for the industry you're in. But what are some of the things that come with being in your profession that are super crucial for you?
Hell knows, non-negotiables. I mean, having a bad hire that's something that I feel like I got to take care of right away, because the longer I allow that bad hire to be around, the more toxic it can be.
Real quick, I don't mean to interrupt you. Well, let me rephrase it, and this is good too. But what, like in your job, like if you were to get out of the business, you're going to need these 2 or 3 things, or else I'm not interested. So freedom, like, I mean, I know you live a good life.
For sure, freedom is a big part of it, right? I want freedom.
Yeah. What are a couple of others that are really important to you? Not specifically about hiring people, but like making an impact, you know, helping people get into homes. What does it for you? What are those things that like you have to have in your career?
You know, freedom that definitely is the top of the list. It's something that I manifest every single day. I mean, Fridays, it's Friday. I'm about to shut down. I call it Freedom Friday. And after this is done, I'm going to hop on my bike and go ride down the beach. That's my Friday afternoon, right? That's something that I manifest, and it would have to be in part of any of my career. Long term, short term, I may have to do things that I don't want to do long term to be able to get myself free, and so it's a means to an end. You know, I want to be in a business that rewards other people and sets up other people. I want to be able to be non-negotiable for me would be something that kind of has limitless potential. I don't want to do something that there is a glass ceiling and that I feel like I'm boxed in. I don't like ceilings. I don't like fences. I like, you know, vast open spaces, and that goes back to freedom. I don't know, Dirk. I mean, that's maybe the only thing that's resonating with me right now.
No, those are great. I mean, it's really, I think if people are thinking about our industry, you know, what you're sharing is something that's definitely doable, right? I mean, you go work for Amazon or Google, or, I mean, I've been in that world. I worked for Mark Cuban, and I worked at Yahoo, and like, you don't have a lot of that freedom sometimes. Like you're going into an office, you're clocking in, you know, but the mortgage industry, outside sales, B2C, business to consumer, like when everyone you meet in your life or on the beach or whatever is a potential client or referral partner, you know, it's freedom. And that's huge for me. It sounds like it's huge for you. As we kind of wind this down, I like to ask a couple questions, same questions. One of them is a typical response I get, but sometimes I'm surprised. If you were to go back and rewind this whole thing, I understand that selling Bibles, your roofing company, all these things kind of are building blocks that got you to where you are. But with your knowledge, I mean, would you expedite? Would you do it different? Like, I'm just curious, if Brent was to go back 22, 23 or whatever, move into Texas, would you go right into the mortgage industry? Would you have chosen financial services? Would you change it up at all?
Yeah, I mean, I do think I would still go back in the mortgage business. There are mistakes along the way that I would have done differently. I would have invested in myself a little earlier in my career. That was the real catalyst. If I looked at, you know, line of the inflection point, the more I invested in my business, the more my business grew. But it took me a little bit longer to get to a place that I could take that initial leap in investing myself and investing thousands of dollars a month that grew into hundreds of thousands of dollars a month. So I would have done that earlier with whatever I could. I mean, start off $100, then $500 and $1,000, and just let it compound. You know, I would have gotten more diverse early on. Instead of rewarding myself and doing some of the things that I did, I would have not pulled money in and out of stock market and gotten scared when the market. I would have understood when there's blood on the water, blood on the streets, it's time to invest. I mean, there were things like that I would have done earlier or sooner that could have, you know, changed our trajectory early on. But I love the cash flow this business creates that then allows me to deploy my cash into other things that ultimately generates me more cash. And then it gives me that space that I don't have to worry about selling that loan tomorrow, or this is going to impact me in my livelihood. I don't know many other businesses that would have given me that cash flow that I could deploy in other things.
Yeah, and the other thing that strikes me is you don't have to do what you're doing. Like, I mean, you're good now. You could retire and live on the beach, and do yoga and meditation and grow your beard out a little more and start playing guitar. Like you can do whatever you want, but yet you're still in the trenches, with your employees and your partners. And I mean, that says something right there that you're back in it. The other question I have is, let's just say God comes down and says, no mortgage, you can't work in the industry, no, lending, no selling debt. You can't do anything related to what you're doing. Is there I like to ask this question because I think it's good for people to, sometimes they might think of you just as this business mortgage dude, but there's much more to Brent than just that. Is there a dream job, like, just like fantasy land stuff that if you could do anything, what would it be? I mean, do you think like that? I think like that. Do you?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I do and I don't. Because I know that I'm passionate about what I do, what I'm doing now, and I love it. If I changed anything or where I can see myself going as the sun sets and I start to unwind from the mortgage business in 10 years, is I'm going to continue to still build my real estate portfolio, commercial, residential, and a lot of apartments or multi. You have appreciation. You've got the benefit of tax benefits on it. You've got cash flow, and then you've got the ability to also get OPM, other people's money. So you invest your money along with promoting and having other people's money come in. And if you become wise in that, then those things can grow to be significant cash flow, but also give you freedom. So that's something that I'm continue to focus on, and I can see the next phase of my life is really have my income continue to deploy into real estate and the cash flow things that I really just have to walk to the mailbox and collect my check. It's not relying upon the efforts that I'm doing. It's relying upon the investments that I made.
Yeah, no, I love it. I mean, I'm not surprised. I thought maybe you'd say you'd be a rock star singer or putting concerts on or something like that. But so, one thing that stood out too that I thought was important mentioning is, some of my favorite people in business are some of your closest friends. And I remember you, Craig Strent, I think Grossman. I don't know. You talked about early on getting a group of people in the industry to meet, and you were very early on with that. And you were always searching for ways to improve your skill set and get better. And I always believe that when you're around people like you or who are better or whatever, it ups your game. I think that's really something too, that to keep in mind if you're younger, is you are oftentimes who you hang out with. Like I would, it's important to be with the right people that build you up. And, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, but I was impressed. Other than Grossman and Strent, were there other guys in that group, or was it just you three?
Well, there were other people in the group. Yeah, there was 8 of us, all top 200 producers in the country. Same thing. We met a couple times a year. We shared very openly with each other, and we were all instrumental in each other's lives and trajectory. That original mastermind was, a huge part, a catalyst for sure in my life, and what I learned from those guys and girls, and what we learned from our mastermind now. It's just about learning and not buying the lesson yourself, right? You're going to buy a bunch of lessons, but the faster you can speed up those lessons and borrow those lessons from other people, to be able to surround yourself with people that are smart, that come from a place of giving, come from a place of abundance, that you can swipe and adapt from. It just speeds things along. It improves your trajectory. It gives you people that have commonality. And yeah, I'm a big believer in, it's just as easy to be friends and surround yourself with highly successful people that have things in commonality as it is for, people that may bring you down and may focus on negativity. Misery loves company. I personally don't have time for it. I don't enjoy being around people that are miserable. And so I'm going to gravitate and spend time with people that I can learn from, that are going to lift me up and that I can lift up.
Yeah, I love it. Well, is there anything on the tip of your tongue that you feel compelled to say, or do you feel pretty complete?
I'm good. Yeah, I think I'm complete. I was just looking at a couple of notes I wrote down along the way, but I think we've hit them all.
Yeah, you were awesome, Brent. Thank you so much. I really, really appreciate you coming on. And I think there's a lot of value and people are going to really benefit from this. So thank you.
Thanks, man. Love you, buddy. Have a good weekend.
See you, brother.
All right. See ya.